And hello, everyone. It's nice to see that we have different teachers joining us from around the world. Um, this is the second module out of two. And if you've missed the first one, do not worry. We are uploading the slides as well as the video on the trainers website, on the qualification website, and I can also share the link towards the end. As Leon said, if you haven't seen me on the first module on Monday, my name is Melios Michael. I am one of the credible specialists for Pearson and a trainer on behalf of them. I've been working with Pearson since 2015 as we were changing qualifications and the grading systems as well. I've done a lot of trials with them, with my students at school, as well as looking at resources that we offer and support them with creating some of the resources that help us with the teaching of both GCSEs and A levels. While I'm a credible specialist, I'm also a deputy head teacher at a secondary school and sixth form in Birmingham, the King Edward schools here. So I only do a few of the sessions for them because of my other role. I'm a teacher still for A level and GCSE, so I do a lot of the feedback and comments that were said in the previous sessions. I do empathize the issues and the concerns that we have, and then I do really support any networks like the one we're doing today. While I start, before I start, you should have received an email to download the delegates booklet. If you haven't, like Leon said, there's a resources tab on Zoom, but also the WeTransfer from earlier on. It's important that you do download that as we will be discussing. We'll have quite a few activities where you could do with having either the Word document or a printed sheet. If you haven't managed to print it, having the Word document on your screens would really help because I won't be able to show the activities at the same time as we talk. The booklet's right now on the screen so you can see how it looks. It's this one here. The first activity within that, we kind of touched upon this on the first module. So we will be going to activity 2 in a few minutes. When we do activity 2, and as I mentioned in the previous session, this will be slightly more interactive than the other one, as I had a lot of information to share in the previous module. And while we do the interactive, because of the numbers that we have, I will be splitting into breakout rooms of about 3 or 4 of you to then discuss the activity and then bring you back, so only for 3 or 4 minutes. If there's any difficulties at that point, Leon's also here to help. Thanks, Leon. He shared on the chat the link again for the delegates booklet. So please download that if you haven't. Within the folder, when you download this, and I'll show you this on the screen now, you will have the booklet that I just showed and referred to. You have the specifications of the International GCSE A and B, as well as the modular one as well. We won't be talking about the modular one a lot. I will refer and repeat some of the information to start with in case anyone wasn't here on the previous module. And then there's also a mapping document for the modular against the linear specification. So that's all in the pack if you download this. The one we really need is the first one here for today to be able to work together. Some people did ask about certificates as well on the last session, so I'll mention that as well. Once we finish this second module, there will be an email sent to you for some feedback. Upon completing the feedback, there will be then a download link where you can download the certificates as well. So I'll repeat that. Once we finish the second module, an automated email will come through to you to offer some feedback. The feedback doesn't just have to be about the session, about me. It's an opportunity for you to also mention any resources or other training sessions that you would like in the future, especially if it's specific for any topics as well. Because we've offered that in the past where we can discuss the teaching and learning of specific topics. If it's to do with technology or anything else like that, you can refer to that in the feedback session, and then you will also be able to download your certificate. In terms of in terms of the delegates booklet, if you could please use the one we've sent today, with some of the activities that are mentioned in them. We'll use that for today's session. Now, as I begin, this is the agenda for today. There'll be a quick welcome again in terms of Pearson. There will be, as I said, a few minutes of a repeat from Module 1. We'll then talk about problem solving and reasoning. We will do some activities in there because it's being able to train our students to access that. So on top of the mathematical concepts, there's always the problem solving and reasoning that we need to work with our students. And the marks are located in the assessments that we mentioned last time. Working with them and building those skills always supports the students when it comes to the exams. We'll then talk about the mark schemes, and then we will try and align our marking as well and see how examiners give those marks so that we can then do different tasks. I did ask, and I'm happy to then kind of tailor my examples in terms of teaching, or if anyone wants to share their specific ways of working or things they do that work really well in terms of the things that we're talking today. Please do share, and there'll be opportunities if anyone wants to unmute themselves and talk as well. I'll tell Leon later on in the session to allow you to unmute and speak. And there will be an opportunity for other questions in terms of the whole qualifications or anything else to then ask me at the end. So I'll allow some time at the end for anyone who wants to stay behind and talk to me specifically about your context at your school or your area. The best support in terms of specific context to your schools, though, will always be your Pearson local representative. They're there to then be able to give you the information, work with you in school as well, but also send us emails and to give the resources or information that you need. On top of that, there's also another email that I'll share later on in one of the other slides. That email, you can then email us, and one of the trainers or credible specialists can then work with your school or schools to then offer some training or support in specific needs of the school. That's all offered for free as part of you being a Pearson school in terms of offering the qualifications that we offer. So I'll touch upon that in the support of the Pearson that I'm mentioning towards the end. The slides, in terms of the slides from today's session, again, if you don't need to worry about copying a few points on that, Leon will be sending you a link towards the end before you leave, another WeTransfer where you can download the specific slides from today's session, where you can then save those against your delegates booklet as well. And on that note, I'll go into the objectives for today, a bit more specific. So it's identifying how the qualifications are devised, review the content of the qualification, explore how to plan the course and or your lessons, understand the assessment of the qualifications and how to prepare the students for this, identify the support available for Pearson, and again, it's an opportunity to network and talk as mathematics teachers around the world about how we do things. And I'll aim to do that with a breakout room quite soon. Someone mentioned about the module 2 of the A level, and that is tomorrow, and there should be a link to that as well. If you haven't had that link, I'll talk with Leon towards the end. So if you ask me again towards the end, I can help you with that. So on behalf of Pearson, I'd like to welcome you all again here. I've mentioned this before, if you were here, if you're new to this, we're one of the largest awarding organizations. We have quite a large percentage of the schools they choose to offer the Pearson specification, the heritage that basically stretches back over 150 years. You can see the numbers there as well. Globally recognized qualifications, we offer them to over 3.5 million students a year. And then in terms of the number of schools that we partner, colleges and employers globally, 6,500. We mark over 10 million. Some of you might be or will be examiners as well. And then we operate in over 70 countries worldwide. Now, again, before I move on, I'm just going to refer to this very briefly. The first teaching of the International GCSE modular should have started this year for any school that chose to take this route. Um, I'll just share a few information on this again, similar to last time, and then we'll start our session. So you've got, as you can see here, we're the only example to offer again a modular and a linear specification and pathway, I would say, for the International GCSE. If you're happy with the linear approach, you don't need to change anything. There's no pressure for you to do that, and the linear one will not be removed. If you believe, though, a modular route will benefit your students, either your existing or your future students, then that's something that your Pearson local representative can support you with. On our website, there's more information as well, and there's been training sessions as well in regards to the modular one that you can then watch as a repeat online. If it's something that you want to attend again, you can again ask us, and I'm sure we can offer that training session. In terms of a bit more information about this, they are in units, so you can see that. So the journey into 2 units with an exam at the end of each unit. We separate, therefore, the content here. Students taking a linear approach will have to have studied all the content before the exam. So our linear specification is structured in a way where all topics can be assessed in both exam papers. Examination on both routes contain a mixture of different question styles, including multiple choices, short answer questions, calculations, and extended open response questions. And a calculator may be used in the examinations. You can see some of the topics here by topic, and you can see in red the topics that are studied for the higher tier students only. I'll leave that for a second or two for you to have a quick browse of the topics. And then you can see some more information here regarding the topics within the modular. Now, there are guides. I mentioned this earlier on. There are guides that you can find online to understand the modular further. You can find it on the website, as well as asking your Pearson local representative. In terms of receipts, here's some information regarding this. So learners can receive any unit irrespective of whether the qualification is to be cashed in. If a learner receives a unit more than once, only the better of the two most recent attempts of the unit will be available for aggregation to a qualification grade. Results of units will be held in Pearson Edexcel's unit bank for as many years as the specification remains available. And once the International GCSE Mathematics A modular has been certified, all unit results are deemed to be used upon that level. The results cannot be used again towards a further award of the same qualification at the same level. Now, as I noted earlier on, this assessment is only available for the International GCSE Mathematics A, and there's more information for this online as well as in future training sessions as well. As we are about to start on our second point, which is regarding problem solving and reasoning, what I wanted to mention, though, if you have joined us for insights regarding the latest assessments or wanted an update on that, this is an introductory session, and that's a different session that we offer. And please, let's go onto our website and you'll see the different training sessions and repeats of videos that you can watch as well of the sessions that took place. It's always good to look at the insights of the exams, see where students went well, certain questions or certain problems that you can. And then if you haven't had the chance to join that and you have any questions, you can email the maths team on the email I'll share again at the end. So with regards to problem solving and reasoning, there's a percentage of each of those separately that have to be given within each paper. So it's important for us to recognize where those marks are given, how they're structured as well and embedded within that. So therefore, it's asked for us to actually discuss and understand that. So as you can see from the screen here, and before you can read that, but a few things to point out. Just remember that 30% of the questions are problem solving and 20% of the questions are reasoning in the for MB1 and higher tier for MA1. So they have similar percentage of marks given to those. If your students are taking the foundation for the for MA1, 25% are problem solving and 15, so slightly less on that and more on the fluency element of this. The problem solving questions that can be applied for any topic in the specification. The reasoning ones tend to come mainly from algebra and geometry, so that's something to be aware of. So as you teach those topics, to try and work with your students. So we're going to start with a task, and I'd like to encourage people to discuss and talk between them. So Leon, if we can allow, before I go into breakout rooms, if we can allow people to unmute themselves. And then what I'll do now, because we have a large number, instead of having one whole discussion or in the chat, I will open breakout rooms so that there's about 3 or 4 of us in each one. And I'll give about, so let me go, let's have a look. So if we open about 28 breakout rooms here, that should be about 3 to 4 participants per room. For you to interact on this task, before I open those, you will need that delegates booklet so you can actually see the task in front of you. If you haven't got that, what I would suggest is print screening or using a snipping tool or some sort of the task on the screen. So I'll make it a bit larger in case anyone hasn't managed to download it yet. So you'll need this task here in order to interact with your fellow delegates on this training session. And I'll explain what the task again is in a minute. So please screenshot this if you haven't got the actual booklet. So and it kind of tells you the question as well. So we have a question, a task here. The diagram shows the floor plan of a room. I'll leave you to read that as we split into breakout rooms. What the task for you is to discuss with the other delegates in the breakout room, what step does a candidate need to take to solve this problem? How would you teach your students to tackle this type of question? So it's an opportunity to discuss the approach that you'll have. It might be worth you having a look at the question and then discussing that in your groups there. So I'll open the breakout rooms now. As Leon said in the chat, that you'll have a prompt on your screen once the breakout rooms are open, which I'll do that now, and please accept the prompt and you'll be transferred. I'll give you about 5 minutes to have that discussion, and then I'll send you a signal that the breakout rooms will close and you'll come back here, and I'll ask for some general feedback on this through either the chat or unmuting yourselves, and then we'll move to the next task from this. So I'll open the breakout rooms now, and if you have any questions or struggling, me and Leon will be in the main room here. Contributions to this. It's always good to hear, as I said, mathematicians, we're all going through similar things around the world, and it's nice to see that. Thank you, Leon. Now, this is another question here. This is in terms of a reasoning here, you could see on the screen. So reasoning skills are also tested in the exams. They tend to be either algebraic, as I mentioned earlier, or geometrical. The crucial points here would be that they need to show the workings as well, and they need to have a conclusion. And it says it on the screen as well. So many students will leave a conclusion behind and they'll lose a mark there, or they won't show sufficient steps to then get the working. I'm sure you all do this as well. We train our students to look at the number of marks and then kind of conclude that you've got 4 marks there. You need to think about a number of steps. So once for conclusion, and then how many more steps you need to show for you to gain the marks there as well. Another one, though, another example, which is on the next slide here, the geometrical reasoning problem is like this one here. This is actually on the foundation tier. It says it on the screen as well. They cannot get, and students cannot get directly to the answer. So the work around the sketch would help them. And sometimes they will also get marks by putting things on the sketch. So even if they're not showing the calculation separately, annotations and things they do on the sketch will contribute to that. Um, the thing that we need to make clear to them is that calculation is not a reason. And like I mentioned in module one, it's making sure the statements they use are also complete. So therefore, if they're going to refer, like here, the reason about angles on a straight line sum to 180 degrees, if they don't refer to the angles, or if they meet something and it doesn't explain that, they won't necessarily get that. Or angles in a triangle in a different, if they say triangle adds up to 180, that doesn't give them the right. They need to make a point and show that even though they mean that, as unless they write the statement correctly down and showing that they understand that, they might not get the marks. So it's also about looking at the literacy behind it and making sure that even if when they give us answer in the class, we correct them. So there's been many times, for example, in a classroom, well, I'll get students to shout out or put their hands up or in the whiteboard, show me the different steps, and I'm taking them, putting them on the board. At that point, I need to kind of stop them if they haven't said the statement correctly, and just correct them at that. So it's almost like coaching them as well in terms of saying the right things so that they can get the marks from that. Here's another one again, one more that I'll show. On this one here, it's an algebraic reasoning question. A particular method is specified here. So therefore they have to use this one because it says use a factor theorem to show. So they have to use that specific method. Any candidates who use algebraic division in this case will gain no marks in part A. So again, we have to make sure. Now, some people, if you notice that they're not picking up the details in the questions, give them highlighters and ask them to highlight that key point of the use, not the whole line, the key point of the method they want. Train them to look for that, because it's a pity if they knew how to do it, but they lose the marks. Algebraic division in this case, in this question, here will probably be required in part B. Alternatives such as equating coefficients or simply by inspection are also valid methods for that one because it doesn't specify, especially when it says hence factorize completely. Now they have omitted they haven't said or otherwise in this case here because you kind of need the first one to do this one. If you didn't have to use the part A, that you'll see those words or otherwise. And I'm sure we're all training our students in terms of that. But it's making it clear and showing you an example of where the reasoning marks are also attributed. And we'll do a task in a bit regarding this to see that. Now, it's always good to understand, and I'm sure we do this as well, when we take the marks, we try and look for those marks where they are given so that we can point them out as well. When you tackled that question earlier on, out of your experience, you were kind of saying, okay, this is a problem solving because this, and this. It's also worth to understand the examiners when they put the questions together, where they're looking for those marks there, and there will be a slight change. That doesn't mean that you're not good. It doesn't mean that they're correct. It just means that their way of thinking as they put that. So we need to understand their way of thinking so that we can train our students as well. And therefore, when we do our adaptations in our classroom, we can refer back to those examples that we've seen. Another reason why it's good to understand their way of thinking is if there's more than one teacher in your school that teaches, let's say, the students who are doing mocks for the International GCSE, it's for us to have a standardized way of marking. And in that case, there we want to all make sure that we've taken examples of questions where our marking might differ and then try and do that. Another example of doing that, and I mentioned in module one, is taking exemplars. Exemplars from the website where you can see what the examiners, how many marks they gave in each one, and it gives you a note at the bottom of why they've given so many marks. I would hide that with a colleague if there's more than one of you, or if you're doing it to yourself to make sure that your marking is aligned with the examiner's marking. I would actually hide that, try and mark and see from the mark scheme, have I given the right amount of marks? And then from that, then check what the examiner said. In addition to that, you can also use your own students' scripts. And I'll mention this at the end as well. Download at the end of one of your year groups, download those sessions, those papers, and see whether you mark the same way as the examiner. Or do it together with that so that when you then when you teach another year group, you're aligned. Or another possibility is, well, let's say you're going to use last year's paper for a mock or the year before. If you have downloaded those scripts, you can use them to standardize your practice. So you have them saved. You're going to use that for your mock as well with your new class. Well, you standardize your marking together and then ensure that you are giving the same amount of marks so that if you're too lenient, you can then go a bit stricter and understand why the examiners wouldn't give that. If you're too harsh, there's a question there whether you want to stay harsh or not, because then you know that there's a benefit in the exams. But again, it's knowing what the true picture will be in the real exams as well. So I've given a few examples there, but let's go into the mark schemes as well. I have to give some general information on this to start with. So they're the answers to the questions. They often give a range of responses a student might give. You will see also in the notes section an alternative method of approach. If the method that the student has used isn't shown there, but it's a credible one, then they will also get the marks as well. It's only if a specific method is requested, like the one before, that they will lose the marks. And they also advise markers of common errors, and examiners use the marks in positively and look to reward marks. So they go with that positive mindset of giving marks where possible in that. There are some discrepancies here and there, which is why sometimes when you see and you appeal for a rem or you have a remark sent out, you might see some of them, and that's because of some gray areas as well, which it's worth checking yourself the scripts if you're not happy or if you see that they're close to certain grades. And that's my personal opinion here, not so much from Edexcel, but it's worth always looking at those scripts and comparing them to the maxims when they're released. In terms of types of marks, you will see the M marks, the method marks. In this case, a single method mark, the whole method must be complete to award the mark. So that's something that we need to wear. Please keep an eye on this because we're going to do a task soon with the mark schemes, and it's in your delegates booklet. I need to emphasize that the A marks can only be awarded if the M mark has been awarded. So that's something important for us to be aware here. So if they don't award the method marks, they cannot get the accuracy mark if it's an A mark. The B marks are independent marks, though. They are awarded for a correct answer seen. These marks are often used in questions with the command write down, where the answer is not the result of a calculation or a method. So those are, when you come to be tackling the task later on, if you have to award the marks, just remember what we mentioned here in terms of the types of marks. Some other things that you'll see in the mark schemes are there is a prefix D. It's sometimes used before the M mark. So you'll say DM. This means that the subsequent M mark is dependent on the method mark that was given before. So if you don't get the first method mark, then this D mark cannot be given either. So if you see that, just be aware of that as well. You'll see the ISW, which means ignore subsequent working, although this can mean ignore any working on the page that does not contradict the correct working. So that you might see that as well. The question states factorize, and the candidate has factorized the three-term quadratic. They have gone on to solve an equation equals to 0, which was not required. In this kind of instance, we could ISW the working after the correct factorization has been seen, so they can ignore that and not lose any marks. The other thing that you'll see in the mark schemes as well is that BOD there, which is the benefit of the doubt. So benefit of doubt, although this is seldom used, there needs to be some compelling evidence in the candidate's work to give this. So if there's something that the examiner feels that they have given enough, or they're implying that they must have understood this to be able to solve that, you might see that there, and therefore they gain the mark. And so those are a few things to be aware of as we mark, so that we can then do something similar within our schools as well. Here's an example of a mark scheme from question 22 on the SAMs. You'll notice here that we have you've got the alternative methods there. You've got the M marks that are given there and how they're given out for each of the working. And you have the A mark for the correct answer in the correct form. And then you have a B1 at the bottom that you can see, and it mentions that this is an example of B mark where the answer can just be written down. If a candidate used calculus, this would also gain this mark if the work was correct. So those are some examples there. And then if we go in and have a look at the marking guidance, because there's something there to emphasize as well, all candidates must receive the same treatment. Examiners mark scripts uniformly to exactly the same standard, just as if every script was marked by one person. That's their aim, at least. And therefore, that's why they use the mark scheme to try and mark everyone the same way. There is no such thing as a generous marker or a strict marker. Everyone marks precisely the same, and it's anonymous as well. And then there's also in the mark scheme that sent out has a slightly more information than the one that's published, which gives a few more some more information for the examiners when they come to mark the actual paper. So how does this fit all together? So if we put all this, so what we mentioned earlier on, the mark schemes, let's just have some quick information regarding this. So senior examiners use this specification strictly to write questions, papers, and mark schemes. So if you are teaching through a textbook, remember that is not what guides the examiners, it's the specification, and you need to ensure that the textbooks that you have in your class covers the whole specification and there's no omissions from this. Or if the textbook gives more emphasis on certain things than others, make sure that the specification does the same and it's not the publisher's or the author's kind of views on the maths, because that can mislead you in the preparation. So remember, it's the specification that overrules it all. And that's something to keep mentioning. They count each mark carefully to ensure that not only the number of marks at each assessment objective is followed, but so are the marks allocated to the grades. And that's something that they try to make sure they do. So the following two slides now show the question and the mark schemes. So just to give a slightly more a few more examples. So here's a problem-solving question. This wasn't answered well from those students who did the foundation here. It's the June 2019 from paper 1. The key to this question is to read it carefully and first underline key facts and try to take the facts from there, and then by modeling and scaffolding and training them how to do that, be then able to think about what maths they need to use and then apply that. There is an obvious clue in the height of the box is 32 centimeters, which is not a multiple of 5 here, and that's the clue there. That wasn't. So if you look at the two shapes there, and the other thing to point out, the final instruction on this question here, which is where my mouse is here, show you're working clearly. So no working, no marks. And that's something clear that you can tell your students. It specifies that, so no working, no marks, even if you've got a correct answer at the end. So it's important that we train them to look for those things. And then if we look at the mark scheme of this one, there's your mark scheme here. You've got the mark scheme as is split into the following columns. First column is the question number. Then the second column has the scheme or working. We see in the fifth column the mark allocated to the first two lines of the working in the second column. And we can see that there that the second M mark, the candidate's results from the division of 32 by 5, or 15 by 4, or 30 by 5 are multiplied for the final answer. The inverted commas that you see means that the values are being followed through. The third column has the answer of 108, and the final A mark not only needs to answer 108, but a conclusion as well. Now, if you see the letters SC on the screen there, that stands for special case. So therefore, they give them an indication of what to follow if they have that special case and what marks they should be giving. In this one here, if we look at this question 26, we can do just to practice this. So if you quickly, and I won't send you into groups, if we can quickly do this for 2 minutes, if you could try and answer this on a paper that you have there or on a tablet if you have a pen, and then I will put the mark scheme up to then see if you can, how many marks you give to yourselves. Well, not how many marks. Where would you give your method marks, your accuracy marks, based on that working that you do, just to that practice. So I'll give you 3 minutes to then try and answer this question. But the important part of this is, can you allocate the marks? So we can see that this does it specify. So you've got how many marks? You've got two marks. You've got 2 marks for part A and 4 marks for part B. So answer that on a paper, please, or for just for the 3 minutes, and then allocate your marks. So let's make it 4 minutes there. Okay, so I'll be in the background for 4 minutes, answer the question, and allocate the marks that you would give. Where would you give the different working marks? So 2 for part A, 4 for part B. Your students to spend so that they don't run out of time either. What is the general guidance that you guys give to your students? Can you just give any feedback on the chat? So 1 mark per minute, once someone says. Any other? Okay. I'm just having a look with this one here. 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, someone mentions as well. So we've got some suggestions there. Notice also the advice that, so you look at that as this, okay, so according to the marks you give the respective time, and then the rest of the minutes for revising for, okay. The other thing to mention is look at even the advice on the front page. Read each question carefully before you start answering it. That's even they've even put the advice there. Someone else mentioned general guidance, 120 minutes for 100 marks. So 1 mark per minute, but think of easier questions, less than a minute, to give you more time for the harder questions and allow yourself 20 minutes to reviewing and checking. And then you could also recommend any questions that you are stuck or you can't approach yet, maybe leave it towards the end and then give that extra time for those to then see if you can gain any more marks. And it's similar to what other people are saying as well. Okay, save time for easy questions to use in difficult ones. That's a nice way of putting that as well. Thank you. And as you can see, everyone's kind of on the same page here with slight variations of the guidance, but and that's a good, yeah, there's not a formal way of from Pearson telling you have to do this, but it's good as teachers to share and see between us what we advise. Looking at the formulae on the formula sheet here. So that's what's given to the candidates for MA1 papers. Every formula must be known. Note that simply trigonometry or Pythagoras is no longer given to the candidates here. And then if I move to the next one here regarding this, so no formula are given in paper 1 at all. This is for the form MAB, by the way, now, just to make it clear, not the A. So this is B specification. So for paper 1, they don't get a formula booklet at all. In paper 2, any formula needed is aside for those in the specification that are required to be known. Will be given in a question and example. I'll show you in the next slide as well. Well, at the one at the bottom there as well. So if they need to be given that, that'll be in a box on the separate. This is for specification B, whereas for A, they get the formula booklet that I mentioned. So that leads us to the next activity, which is a marking activity, and that's also in there, and that's just so that we can align ourselves, like I said earlier on. So if we skip activity 5 in our booklet, because that we kind of discussed that, and I had some answers within the chat box there. So this is our next activity. So question 5 from paper 1F. That's our question there. And then if we scroll down, there's the mark scheme for that one there. And then we have a response from a student there, and a second response there as well. You can see the difference. And then we have a higher question, a question from a higher paper. And then if we scroll down, there's the mark scheme for that. And then you'll have two responses as well from students who've attempted that. That's the first one. And then you have the second one there. So what we need to do for this activity, so it's in there that we kind of need that. So you've got the following two questions with the mark schemes and a student response are in your pack. What I'd ask you now to do is mark these questions, so as if you were the examiners and following the guidance, so that we can see if we're all agreeing with this. So I will give you, let me see the time that we're at. So I will give you 10 minutes because it might be worth you answering the question first, and then looking at the mark scheme, and then looking at the two responses. And remember, you're going to try and follow as strictly as possible the mark scheme, but then trying to positively mark now, and then see if you agree with the marks that the students actually were given, which I'll share with you after the 10 minutes. So I'll give you 10 minutes. That's a foundation and a high question. Solve them. Look at the two responses for each one. Give the marks, following the marks in there. If anyone hasn't got the booklet here, so I've got the questions there. I will then display the responses in a few minutes on there. But you could do with this one, with the actual booklet. Let me know if there's a problem. I'll be in the background. So 10 minutes from now, that'll take us to past. And then I'll share with you and see if we've all agreeing with that. And if anyone disagrees with what we're giving, it'll be interesting to hear why, and then see the different viewpoints as well. So 10 minutes, let's do some maths, solve the foundation and the high question first, look at the two responses, give the marks based on that, and then we'll come back together. So I'll be in the background in silence here, just to allow you time to think and to work this out. So 10 minutes till past. Thank you, and I'll be on the background here. Can I ask also, Leon, if we can let people unmute themselves if they want to ask me a question? But I'd rather if it's specifically for this task for now, please. I'll give you time at the end for anything else. Leon, are we okay to resend that link with the booklet, please, on the chat? Thank you. So in terms of allocating the marks, so it's good if some people have already started sharing. So if we start with the foundation question first, you've got 4 marks there. If you could write on the chat the marks that you gave. So out of the 4 marks, how many marks do you think you can use? One, you can either say 2 or like the person wrote now, or you can say the method marks or so on. So how many marks would you give? You can be precise, or you could just say the number of marks on the chat. So just for the first response, please. So, and then so I've got 2 marks, another person says as well. Another person said M1, M1, M0, and A0, so 2 marks. So you seem to, and actually, that is what they received as well. They have one method mark for finding 3,575. So you're right with that one. 1 mark for finding the 2,145. However, 0 marks because it kind of subtracts the number of boys from the total instead of the number of children. And then 0 marks for the accuracy following from the M0 there. So 2 marks, an M1, an M1, an M0, and an A0. And can I have your responses then for the second student? The second response for the foundation one again. Out of the 4 marks, how many would you give to that response? So if I put so you're saying someone said 1. So if I bring the second response on here, we're going back up, sorry. There we go. So for this person here, response 2 on your booklet, someone says response 2 would get 0 marks. Another person says 0 marks as well. So another person says 1 mark. An M0 and an A0 you have here, 0, another person says. Response to 0 marks, 1 mark, another person says. Okay, so you'll be a bit surprised with this one. So although for this one here, although there is no working at all, we can give an M1 for the 3,575 there. So that's the benefit of the doubt that they've calculated on there, and they've somehow worked that out, and they actually get a second method mark for showing the 2,145. So in this case here, they would get 2 marks. They will lose the other 2 marks because there's no other calculation or the final answer there, but they will still get 2 marks by just showing those two figures there. And this is where I said that we need to kind of align ourselves with what the examiners would do. So that was slightly different. So let's move on to the second, the higher paper. That was that question there. And I'm only reading what they've actually given from the scripts for this one here. So there's the mark scheme, and then there's the first response for the students. So that's what they've done there. They've got a lot of working on that. And this one here is out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marks. It's a 5-marker question. So again, if anyone who's already given awarded marks, can you let me know on the chat? The line at the bottom is so someone asked, Leo asked about the line at the bottom should be for the final answer, but because it's on the still on the actual space, and they have shown that 2,145 on the previous question there, the response, they will still give them that mark. They won't penalize them because they put it on the answer there. So for this one, people are saying 3 marks. Some people have said 2 marks here. 2 marks as well, someone else mentioned. And we can see even between us, we seem to be disagreeing on the number of marks. So I'm between 3 and 4 marks, another person said. So this is how they've awarded the marks. 4 marks, someone else. So the examiners have given an M1 for the correct substitution in this one. But they gave 0 marks for the accuracy for an incorrect trinomial there. They then gave they gave a DM1 mark, so for the complete method for to solve the trinomial. But of course, they then lost the 2 accuracy marks that are followed through, so which led them to have only 2 marks on this case, in this case here. So I'll repeat again. M1 for the correct substitution, 0 for an incorrect trinomial, but then a DM1 mark for then a complete method to solve the trinomial, but then they lost the other 2 marks for the accuracy mark there. Let's have a look at the second one then. So the second response is this one here. So again, if I ask you, so out of those 5 marks, how many do you think this person deserves now based on what you heard earlier on? Be interesting to see if anyone's thought of it differently. So I have someone saying all 4 marks. 3 marks, someone else mentioned. A few people are saying 4. There are errors made to the problem simpler. Okay. Anyone else want to contribute here? So a lot. The 4 seems to be a popular between us here. So someone says all 5 marks. 4 marks are okay. Cannot get 5. A lot of people are saying 4. So this is what the examiner said. So they will get an M1 for the correct substitution as well, with an A1 for the correct trinomial in this case. A method 1, another method mark for the complete method to solve the trinomial. This mark is dependent on the first mark, so they get 3 marks so far. However, they'll get 0 accuracy for only 1 correct x value and 0 marks for only 1 pair of correct coordinates because of only 1. So therefore they lose the final 2. So they'll get 3 marks in this case here. I don't know if anyone wants to at this point ask a question, or and I'll put what I've just said on the display as well. So there's the what I mentioned for the first one. Give you a second to have a look at that. And then here's the answers for the second one here. Now, I am going to skip this activity here, but I will share the slide so you can actually see the responses, because it's another task similar to this one. So there were 3 responses here, and I'll come to this one here just to discuss a few points so that I can allow some time at the end as well for any other questions on the course. So a few points, I'll read these ones out as well. When we teach how can I teach a good exam technique? Ensuring that the students practice using a whole paper and understand how it is laid out, understand the importance of looking at the mark allocation, read the whole question first before any attempts it's made to answer it, and therefore we can model that within our lessons. Always showing complete methods. An examiner can only assess what a student is thinking by the written work in the examination paper. They don't have the opportunity to explain themselves, so therefore it's important that they write as much as they can on the paper. Encouraging students to write neatly and work in an orderly manner. I've always had students who I had to train to then structure the working and not having working flying here, there, and everywhere. So at least I say no. And if they end up doing that because they're thinking, at least if they can number the thoughts that they have had, so that an examiner can follow through and understand their thinking and give them any marks where possible. Understand that we always provide more than enough paper. You don't need to fill in the whole booklet. So just because of there's an extra page of that of writing doesn't mean they have to fill that in. Another suggestion would be a walking, talking mocks. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's a nice tool when you have students who struggle and they need to get used to the exam, is actually go through it together. In some cases where an intervention had to be made for a whole year group, we have put year groups in a hall, and then instead of having them doing independently, we will be reading the question, scaffolding it together, them attempting the question, and then this way, and then emphasizing key things for them to train them. You could do that as a class, you could do that in a small group. So in a similar way that you do when you're teaching in a class, but you go through a paper or a section of the paper depending on the time allocation that you have. So that's another point that uh, another method that you can have. A bit more on the walking talking mocks on this slide here. Students sit in the same exam room where they will do their exams, probably in the same seats. That also it's also for psychological factors where they kind of feel more comfortable. They get used to being in there. So, but not as for high on a high stakes exam. Even the mock when they do that, that's similar high, but this is a step before that. Students are given an exam paper which is as close to being like in the real things as possible, exam written kind of booklet or as something relevant. And if you don't want to do the full paper, you do a section or a topic kind of, it could be one specific topic. Students are literally walked through every question on the paper. The person leading the session talks them through the smaller steps, such as underlying keywords, how to plan, things to remember, and therefore they feel more comfortable, more familiar with this, um, which helps them with the real exam. Students then write the responses in a time condition as well. So you don't time the explanation, but you say, okay, now you've got 3 minutes to then attempt the question after you've explained the key things. I don't know if anyone at this point has attempted a walking talking mock, and if you'd like to share any views, or if you've done it in a different way than what we've shared here. Leon, I'm not sure if they're still unmuted here, but if they can be, and any suggestions on this, please feel free to mention now. And then, so someone's already mentioned on there, students practice each and every paper and are able to do well in the mocks. Is there any resources apart from past papers where I can ask? I'll mention that now when I go into the support section. Okay, someone says they could try that. Like I said, Pamela, I'll come to you in a second there now. Like I've mentioned, if you don't have the whole time to do a full paper, you can take a section of the paper. You could even choose the section or the topics that you think they haven't done well. You could do that after the mock. So they could do the mocks. Normally, you can mark them. You can find the areas that they seem to be weaker on, and then you can find another booklet on those questions only, and then you could do the walk and talking mock maybe back in the hall if you think the hall is the issue as well. If you think it's just their ability to problem solve or the ability to tackle those specific topics, then you can do that in the classroom as well. I'll come back about the resources in a minute, Pamela. I don't know if you still wanted to ask something there because I saw you.
No, it was only to share since you were asking what we've done
Yeah,
or how can it be useful for our students. I've
please
done it
do.
for other exams, other exams and several years, and I found it very useful. I mean, students need different times, so I give them as homework already to take the exam paper and read through and identify topics to start with, and then to
Hmm.
read a little bit more carefully and underline keywords and all that, and but not to write anything so that we can discuss it in class. And after that session, students feel more confident because as a group, we help each other to look for key points and to look for where there could be some difficult questions, some trap questions, and all that. So when they answered it, they were more prepared to do it.
And thank you for sharing that. And actually, that's a good valid point there. The together is important because a lot of the time when we do assessments, it's almost like a competition as well, or it's you do high stakes because you want to see how they're from. But when you have students with lack confidence or as well, or sometimes they don't do well enough, doing a walk and talking mock either in a classroom or in a hall shows that we're going through this together, and you're sending the positive message that we can improve, we can get through this, and we still have time. So it's thinking about how early you could do this so that you have the time to then intervene, support them, and help them build those skills. So thank you again for that contribution. In terms of how someone asked how you will go about organizing this or arranging this, it depends on the school that you're at. So if I think about the schools that I've worked with, if I want to use it in my classroom within the time that I've got to teach, that's the most easiest one. I just prepare, perhaps if I need to notify my head of department, I'm sharing this. If you're going to do this in the hall, then it gets a bit more complicated, depending if you have a hall that's always ready for exams, or classrooms that can be joined together to do that if you want to, or if you want to use the exam same hall that you have, then you need to speak to the school. You might want to run this through your head of department, or then the person who runs or organizes either bookings or the exams, to then arrange for the seats to go up, the tables to go up, to book the space, to check if there's anything else on the calendar of your school, any other events. To then see if you're going to use more than the time allocated for your lesson, to see whether you can take the students out of another period or another lesson. If that's complicated, could you then run through if you have a lesson at the end of the day, that you can extend your lesson a bit and notify the students beforehand. So there's some logistical um, uh, issues that you have to go about. And the other thing is, if there is an issue with the grades, or you want to try this and you think that the school will fully support you, you can even ask the school to organize this for you, depending on the school that you're at. So it varies depending on the school and the people that are working with you, how easy it is or not to do this in the hall. So at that point, I would speak to your head of department or to any line manager that can support you with this.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So, would the students during the walking talking mock be doing one walkthrough, then one question, then one walkthrough, one question, or do I give like a small lecture and they then kind of have to
Yeah,
remember?
yeah, you can do both. I mean, the idea of this one is to almost like do the exam with them. So therefore, it's
Mm-hmm.
going through the question, then passing on to them and pass. The issue behind this that you need to consider is, if you have a group of students that kind of vary quite a lot in ability, you're kind of stopping the other students from doing that, from moving forwards much faster. So that's something to consider, and then think about what they do. Do you want them to
Mm-hmm.
wait? Another thing to consider is, if you have some really top flyers, do they need to go through that task with them? Could you give them some independence, and you could then go through it with the other students as a support
Mm-hmm.
mechanism instead? So there's not one rule that fits all, but you can adapt the task to then work with the students that you have in front of you here. But the original thought process behind walking, talking, walk is that everyone goes through it together, and then you
Okay.
are moving them through the exam, which is also why
Mm-hmm.
you might consider, do I want to give the full paper, or do I want to choose the questions that, or the topics that my
Like the
students.
problem-solving ones.
Yeah, exactly. So you could be
I have an
selecting.
idea
Okay.
that. Sorry for cutting into this. You were speaking. So my
No
idea
problem.
was to maybe go through key points are and suggestions for
Mhm.
scaffolding the questions, and allowing the students first to listen to me for the first 2 minutes, and then make notes like on a separate piece of paper, so that I can go through all of the questions, and then they will rely on the notes that they took during the walkthrough.
That's a great idea. So you could go through doing the full part first, and then giving them the time afterwards. The only thing I would then consider, again, because I'm thinking of my context of different type of classes I've had,
Mm-hmm.
is if your students have the capability of staying focused for a longer duration of time. So because
Mm-hmm.
you will do all those key points first, it depends of if you're doing a full paper or another one, how long you are talking towards them and how much they're taking in and doing that, and then passing it to them to then try attempt other questions.
Mm-hmm.
So that can work for some classes. Some other classes it might be difficult, but it might be also a good idea. Definitely something I might consider trying myself. So thank you for that, Albert.
So okay, so probably not the full paper, but the most important questions and the problem-solving ones.
Yeah, I would suggest that. It really depends on the groups that we have in front of us and the context of
Mm-hmm.
your school. I mean, in the UK here, I've worked in a comprehensive school where it's like a public school where it's not selective, and then I've also worked the current school I'm working at is a selective school. So the ability of the students, even though some of them are more able students from that public school, would be the same ability as the current ones. The very lowest ability students I had in the public school, the comprehensive school, they're nowhere near the selective school I have now. So I would have approached it very differently with them compared to the ones now. So it's adapting the practice. But I would say if you're selecting and you're doing it in the classroom, there's a less logistical things to consider. But then there's also the benefits of doing it in the same environment that they would do the exams as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other points or questions on this on the walk and talking mocks? Right. So if I then, Leon, if you turn off the mute them for a few minutes now, and then we'll unmute again for the final questions and answers towards the end. I have gone through this support with this. I'm going to go much quicker here now. I'm not going to go into as much detail as in module 1. Please refer to module 1 video, which will be online, or the slides when these are shared in a few minutes, so I can give a few minutes for questions and answers at the end. So all the support that we offer are basically grouped into the following categories here. Please have a look at this slide later on, and then you can then be able to find or ask questions on any of this, or ask for more resources in any of this. The actual qualifications website, which is the one that you can see here. In this one here, it's if you go into the course materials then splits into this specification, the sample assessment material, and some teaching and learning materials, which you can see over here, and that's increasing as we go ahead. Some of them will be linked, some of them will be locked, sorry, because we try to protect some of that so that students don't access them too earlier on in case you want to use them in your classroom or as an assessment. So you might need a log on, and please see your exam officer for this to give you logins for the qualifications website. The other tool is the Results Plus. That's really good to look at insights. That's really good to look at the insights of any of the exams or any assessments. If you do your own assessments, you can upload a mark book as well, and then that will give you insights of strengths and weaknesses by classroom, by students, by our whole year groups as well. And then you can compare how your students performed against nationally or internationally, and then this will then guide you towards how much weight or time you want to give to the students in the future. Or whether you want to find a different approach of teaching things. So that's free from Edexcel Pearson. The way that this works, students take the exams, exam papers are scanned, like I mentioned earlier on, examiners mark the papers, and then the performance reports are then shared through the Results Plus. The other tool is the exam wizard. If you haven't used it, again, use the same logins to join us on that one. You can do bespoke assessments, or like I've mentioned earlier on, if you want to create your own assessment, you can do that through the exam wizard. Sorry, this one here is really good, especially even for the walk and talking, because you can create your own device, your own one. You can devise if you want, if they've done an assessment and you want to find something to set for homework or based on what they did well or didn't do well, basically you can then create more for them to revise or to work on this. You can then also get them to watch videos online. There's a lot of free videos, or some of the other platforms for them to try and improve on those before you reteach them, and then set a work from the exam wizard. That's something that you can do as well. The other thing here is the access to scripts. This one here is also available after every examination. This is where I said maybe perhaps download the papers and have them saved for either moderation or to even go through the same task that we've done earlier on with your own students and get them to give the marks, because then they'll be surprised. Sometimes when they mark other people's work, they get to realize the importance of showing the working or how to show the working as well. And then you can point out a few things like I've done with you guys today. So it's always good to do that with the students. There are paid resources as well, such as the active books. There's also the teaching hub. There's exam practice books and revision guides that you can purchase. They're not a necessity for you to deliver the qualification, but they're optional ones, and you can find them online on the website. This is one of the textbook here. There's always benefits and drawbacks from every textbook, but the important thing to mention here is that whether you choose the Pearson textbook here or other publishers, is to remember that yes, if you end up following the textbook to teach the qualification, it's the specification that's important, not the textbook. So it's always worth the first time around that you're using your textbook to always have your specification, and then as you teach to refer back to them, make sure that the textbook covers it properly and the emphasis it gives is the right one, because the examiners will use the specification to set the papers. The teaching hubs, please ask. There's a lot of resources on there. It's a paid service. Please ask your Pearson local representative for access or to see, have a look at that, and then decide about this. And then any other questions? I did mention this at the beginning. If you want to reach, you can even name myself. If you have any specific questions that you want to contact me as well. If you reach the teachingmaths@pearson.com, refer to my name as well if you have any questions for the specific course that we've done over the 2 modules. Any other general resources? The Maths Emporium, there's a lot of free resources. There's not as many, unfortunately, for the International GCSE as there is for the GCSE. However, you can go into the GCSE and find other resources. People have asked in the chat earlier on where you can find other things apart from past papers, or I even mentioned the bronze, silver, gold booklets. They're on the Maths Emporium under the GCSE one. Topics crossover with the GCSE anyway. There are a few extra topics in here that you don't have on there, but you can definitely use for a lot of the topics. There's other resources such as GeoGebra files for technology. There's other ones, more problem-solving packs as well, and reasoning packs on the Maths Emporium that you can download for free and use with your classes. There are topic-specific assessments that you can find on there as well. So there's a lot of resources that are free. Go and log on to Maths Emporium. You might have to register if you haven't registered before and look for that. But if there's any other course or other resources that you'd like to use, please contact us. And at this point, I'll stop. Someone's mentioned about the recording, and the recording for the first one is not uploaded yet, because they have to go over it first. Make sure that if there's any comments from the delegates like yourselves today that they removed before it's published online. So that might take the slide now for today. Leon, if you could share the link, you can download the slides for today that goes hand in hand with your delegates booklet. So Leon's just shared that. So you please, before you leave, click to download that. I will go to questions, but if anyone needs to go, thank you very much for joining and for participating in the session today. I hope you've had some ideas coming through or some things that clarify them. If there's something from them that's worth the time, thank you for listening. Thanks for joining. I will stay a few minutes now to answer any specific questions. If you don't have any, again, thank you very much as you leave. So have a great rest of the day.